is awakening. Often the mind thinks, okay, once I really understand what this awakening thing is, and I get some tools and tips from somebody as to how to do it, then gradually I'll be able to work my way towards it, and then I'll get it, and then I'll be happier, and then I'll be at peace. And all of that sounds really reasonable, doesn't it? Because it's the way we do everything. We learn about it, we get good at it, and we achieve what we want. But over the next hour, I'm going to talk to you about how that mind strategy does not apply when we're looking at awakening. So what I'd like for you to do is to, over the next hour, is simply to be curious, to have an open mind, and almost to play detective, to be really aware of what's arising in you as we go through this, just to see what's already here now. And so as the song goes, let's start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. And during this hour, if anything comes up for you to discuss or you want to ask, you don't have to wait to a special time to ask questions. If you want to say anything or ask anything, just put your electronic hand up if you're live in the meeting. If you're a person in the future watching the recording, leave a comment and I'll under the video, and I'll check back regularly on YouTube and answer any questions that are left. So let's begin. I invite you just to close your eyes and take a deep breath, and just center yourself in whatever way, however that makes sense to you. Come into this moment with a sense of curiosity, open to whatever is here to be seen. And as I said, in order to explore what awakening is, let's go back to the beginning. And anybody who knows me knows that I love poetry and I use poetry a lot. And I think the English poet William Wordsworth gives us our first clue to what awakening is. He wrote, "Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar, but not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God who is our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy." And that little stanza is part of a much longer poem, Ode on Intimations of Immortality, written by William Wordsworth, as I say. And it says so much, and it may be stating the obvious, but any talk of awakening kind of presupposes that there's something that's asleep. And our bodies and our minds are clearly not asleep in this moment. So what is it? What is it that Wordsworth is talking about when he says our birth is a sleep and a forgetting. And as I said, the thinking mind can't figure this stuff out. So don't even try. Put aside the thinking mind and just receive the words of the poet and notice what's sparked within you as you listen once again to those words. Receive the poem as a type of wake-up call, a little knocking on the door. Wake up, there's something here to see. So I invite you to close your eyes again. I think, when we block out the visual sense, it's often easier to go within and to really listen internally. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. We've forgotten something fundamental about ourselves, that the mere act of being born sets in process. Can you sense that? Is there something in you that has always known that? Often we have a sense of something's not quite right, something's missing, and we can't really articulate it, although it may show up in all sorts of ways in our lives. But I just encourage you in this moment to ask yourself, has part of me fallen asleep? Is there something crucial about my true nature that has been forgotten, been overlooked? Wordsworth goes on to say, the soul that rises within us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar. One of the most liberating moments of my life was when I realised I was being breathed. I had a sudden sense at a time when it looked as though my life had completely fallen apart. And I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know what to do. I had a sudden realisation, I'm not even in charge of my next breath. And that little piece of the poem really speaks to that whatever is here living this life hath had elsewhere its setting and cometh from afar. How does that show up in your life? How do you respond when I say I had a realization I was being breathed? Just take a moment to observe your breath. Can you really say that you're doing it? Or is it this moment-to-moment gift that, just like our true nature, is completely overlooked, taken for granted? Just for a few moments, receive the breath as a gift. Notice the breath is here. At the exact moment it's needed, it's here. And for me, this realization of being breathed developed and extended into noticing I was being lived, I was being moved. And that realization happened and happens for all of us at some point, because as Wordsworth said, we're born not in entire forgetfulness, not in utter nakedness. While we may overlook our true nature, it's not entirely forgotten. Something in you remembers. And you may say, well, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if something in me remembers. But I'd suggest that you wouldn't be here. You would not be interested in attending something like this if something in you was not already starting to wake up. Can you feel into that sense of, I always knew there was something? That may manifest as a longing for something. It may manifest as dissatisfaction. For some people, it manifests as a kind of homesickness, of being a stranger on the earth. Some sense of not quite fitting in. Almost like there's something on the tip of your tongue that you can't quite articulate. Wordsworth says, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God who is our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. Don't get hung up on the God word. All it's pointing to is that we are more than these flesh and blood bodies. And anybody who has held a newborn baby or a baby in its first days of life knows that they come trailing clouds of glory. What happens when you consider that no matter what's happened in your life, you came trailing clouds of glory? That you came perfectly equipped for this life and for awakening. Everything you need is within you. But what happens? We come in trailing clouds of glory, but what happens? Well, conditioning happens. And what's conditioning? I looked up a definition. I thought, what's a really easy definition of conditioning? And one is, conditioning is a form of learning using the association of a stimulus and a response. So very simply, when we were babies, for example, we were hungry, so we cried. And if our hunger was met with milk, We learned that crying brought us what we wanted. And hopefully we've moved on from that. But our childhood is just one long period of conditioning. It's different for all of us depending where we were born, the parents we were born to, the culture we're born into. But it begins with you are your name. So in my case, you are Susan. We're immediately told that what we are is a separate being, a person that bears our name. Think about what you were told in your early childhood, all the way through to adulthood. Our families had rules and standards and things that were expected of us. If you do things this way, you're a good girl. If you do things that way, you're a bad girl. And if you're bad, then you'll be punished. Things as simple as nice children share. Big boys don't cry. Of course you love your sister. These messages are given to us over and over again. And because we're just wee children, we believe everything that we're told. And we make them mean something about us. We don't have the ability to think that our parents are not perfect. Perhaps what they're teaching us is not the truth. We just absorb the conditioning. And that conditioning becomes the filter through which we see the world. And that sleep and that forgetting gets more and more and more solid. Those precious little babies that we were, who came in trailing clouds of glory, start feeling that they're not good enough, that they need to be a certain way to please others. And on and on and on it goes. And it carries on, and we build a personality, an identity, that when we really pause to think about, is almost exclusively based on what someone else told us that we are. You're this kind of person. And it goes on until there's some kind of pattern interruption. For some of us, that might be an illness. It might be anxiety or depression or burnout or loss. For some people, it might be noticing that after decades of doing exactly what I was expected to do, getting the job, having the 2.4 kids, being successful, being a useful member of society, having ticked all the boxes, noticing, well, why am I not happy then? Why am I not happy all the time? And noticing, as one writer said, that you've climbed to the top of the ladder and realised the ladder's leaning against the wrong wall. For other people, that pattern interruption can be when they really notice that there's an inner critical voice in the head, that this voice narrates the world, has something to say about everything and everybody, has really strong opinions on your behaviour. In The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer refers to that inner voice as the inner roommate and suggests that if it was a real live roommate sitting on the couch next to you, you would kick them out. But for years we listen. For other people, the pattern interruption is not something negative. It's not based on suffering. It can be being stopped by beauty. Noticing some beautiful landscape or looking at beautiful art, listening to exquisite music, being at the birth of a baby, being with a loved one as they die. Those peak experiences that give us a sense of mystery, of connectedness, of aliveness. These situations, whether they are accompanied with a sense that things are going wrong in life or are more transcendent experiences, what's happening is we're beginning to remember whatever was forgotten at birth, in childhood, whatever was conditioned out of us or was covered by our conditioning is starting to remember itself. Because awakening is not something that we do. The person doesn't awaken. What actually happens is we awaken out of our identification as a person. And questions begin to arise, such as, is this all there is to life? Who am I really? Why am I here? For some of us, it feels like, what's happening to me? The way I've lived my life, the way I've organised everything suddenly is no longer working. And something else seems to be coming online that I don't understand. What is that? So I ask you to reflect on your own experience. Have you had what I've called a pattern interruption? Where suddenly questions start to arise. Perhaps you start to read spiritual books or watch stuff on YouTube or join a spiritual community. And for some people, this sense of longing or dissatisfaction or something emerging is met by a self-improvement campaign. That's often what we do first. We go towards self-help. And we might try to fix what we consider is broken in our lives. Everything that we perceive is going wrong. And that's almost just like a detour. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's almost just like a detour, because once we've ticked all the boxes and we've lost weight, got fit, got the divorce, got the new job, started a business, whatever, ticked off the bucket list, we realise that that sense of longing is still there. It wasn't answered. Pleasurable as though many of those things can be, it didn't answer that divine longing. And we maybe start to recognise that what we're feeling is a divine longing. And that's the point at which we really recognise that lasting happiness is not found in getting more stuff or achieving more things. And we begin to turn toward what's calling. We live in a culture that if difficult emotions are arising, we're encouraged to repress them in some way, distract ourselves, have a drink, go, have a nice dinner, go on holiday. But what awakening asks us to do is to turn towards what's here. I'm going to read you a poem by Rumi. Every midwife knows that not until a mother's womb softens from the pain of labour will a way unfold and the infant find that opening to be born. Oh friend, there is treasure in your heart. It is heavy with child. Listen, all the awakened ones, like trusted midwives, are saying, welcome this pain. It opens the dark passage of grace. We're so conditioned to run away from pain, to label it bad, wrong, and for it to want it just to stop. But Rumi is reminding us here, all the awakened ones, like trusted midwives, are saying, welcome this pain. It opens the dark passage of grace. So here is one quality of awakening: to be with what is, to welcome everything that's arising in your life as a wake-up call from your true nature. So ask yourself, what's happening in my life that I've been trying to push away? And if you're already on a spiritual path, what is it that you tell yourself, this can't be awakening? This doesn't feel peaceful and joyful and blissful, so it can't be awakening. And listen to Rumi's words one more time. All the awakened ones, like trusted midwives, are saying, welcome this pain. It opens the dark passage of grace. What is the pain that you're being asked to welcome? Allow that to be here. And as you watch, as you allow whatever is here just to be here, notice, what is it that's watching? Is what's watching in pain? And perhaps that question doesn't even make sense, but to whatever degree you can, notice there's a gap between what's arising and what's watching. What is it that's looking through your eyes? What is it that feels your feelings? And again, don't try to answer this with your mind. Instead, I invite you to close your eyes if they're not already closed. And I'm going to ask Cindy to play a song, Who You Really Are, by Kirtana. So just as you listen, keep your eyes closed and just let it wash over you. Just like we did with the poetry, notice what arises for you as you listen to the words.
Could there be more to this life we call mine than a journey through space, or a storyline? More to life then the body can sense, then the mind can conclude from experience. This who we are, begin with breath, depend on form, or end with death. Strip away these roles, these names, and tell me what remains, and who you really are, who you really are. Measure success by the things we accrue, or the bonds that we form, or the deeds we do. But these too shall pass. As hard as we try to hold on to form, form will die. But inherent in this dance of form is the chance to see what's yet unborn, and the choice to throw this chance away and be caught up in the play of who we think we are, who we think we are. This is your lifetime. It could end at any time. Where is your attention? Where is your prayer? Where is your song? In a fortunate life comes a call to be free from the cycle of bondage, misidentity. To wake from the dream and finally realize the truth of one's being before the body dies. So before the final scene is past, see the screen on which it's cast. See what's seeing, this me and you, and then you will see who you really are, who you really are, who you really are, who we really are.
Thank you, Cindy. So the words of that song really point toward what awakening is. You know, often we may say, oh, I've not had an awakening experience, because we have an idea, a thought in our mind of what we think it is. And we imagine it will be some huge experience that will completely obliterate our previous life and leave us in a state of eternal bliss. And yet this song points over and over again to a gentle curiosity. And if we have that gentle curiosity, then we know that awakening has begun. Could there be more to this life I call mine? Is there more to life than the body can sense? Reflect on your own experience. What we awaken out of is misidentification. Kirtana sang, strip away these roles, these names. Think of all the roles you play in your life. Strip all of those away. Strip away everything you've been told you are, everything you think you are, and what remains. Be curious about that. Not as a once and for all question that you ask once, but as an inquiry that you live with. Kirtana asked the question, where is your attention? Where is your prayer? Where is your song? What she's asking is, what is most important? What's this spiritual path about for you? She says, in a fortunate life comes a call to be free. You have a fortunate life because this is your call to be free. To lay aside the misidentification. And to start to notice what has always been present. What has always been aware of every moment of your life. And awakening is not, it's not one and done. It's the beginning of the spiritual path, not the end. It's a recognition that maybe things are not how I've always thought they were. And something arises within us that's cute, that wants to investigate, that wants to explore. It's like opening your eyes in a strange new world. And just wanting to play. To turn over every little rock to see what's underneath. Often we make spirituality into such a serious business. But what does trailing clouds of glory look like in an adult life? Jesus said, unless you become as little children, you will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. I think that's what he meant, that childlike curiosity. Like, oh, what's this? What's here to see? We see with greater and greater clarity as we live our lives, as we live our ordinary lives, that we're not who we thought we were. That we have access to inner wisdom. And then there becomes no separation between the spiritual life and life. It's seen that everything is holy now. Everything is just the unfolding of this grace. Cindy, if you could play the next song, please.
When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two. Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. Miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, to finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips. But now I have to hold my breath, like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. But I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come, say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. But I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now.
Thank you, Cindy.
If you'll forgive the irony of my wording, all of this has been like a lovely bedtime story. Thank you.
Thank you, Alenka. So there's just a couple of minutes left. If anyone has anything they'd like to say or ask, or Judy, please.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi, Judy.
It's absolutely beautiful. Thank you. So beautiful. When you were talking about awakening and that, and you read Rumi's poem. Well, I think one of Rumi's poems, the one that says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there. And when I read that, it was as if that field just opened up, and not this eye, but it's hard to explain, but there I was, if you want to put it that way. And it seemed as if creation is creating all the objects, all the forms in it, sort of like, because I know Rupert Spira for one says, know thyself, or creation is looking to know itself. And it's like, say, I can't see my face with my physical eyes, so I have to look into a mirror to see it. So it's as if creation is creating all these forms as its mirror to be able to look inside and know itself. So it's kind of stepping in and out of that space is what's happening for me right now. But I do find that the more I practice being in that field, as Rumi calls it, it's almost becomes a habit, a good habit. And like it's
And I would suggest it's actually the opposite of that. The more you realize that you're never out of that space.
yes, that's a far better way of putting it. Exactly.
Because we are never out of that field.
Yeah, much better way of putting it. Thank you so much.
I'm just going to read that whole poem. It's very short. Thank you for bringing that, Judy. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
And thank you again, Susan, for today. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, that brings us to the end of the hour. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I must confess to having some fear, perhaps, that because it was Mother's Day, there would only be 2 people here. And then look what happens. Look in the moment that, look at that thought that arises from conditioning. And there's nothing wrong with that, out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing. There is only the noticing and the living and the letting go and the recognition that everything truly is holy now. Thank you all so much for coming. Bye, everyone.